How are you folks doing out there in Croasdaile Village this week? Hope you're doing great. Glad you tuned back in for us here to see our podcast number 3. And today we have Dorene. Is going to speak. She corrected me before. Dorene, could you please tell us all about you?
Well, I was born and raised in the mountains of East Tennessee, inside of the Unaka Mountains. My grandmother set a precedent for our family by going to college, a woman in college in the 1880s. And so for East Tennessee, this was a special focus that my family had, was on our getting an education. One of the things about my life is I've always been blessed by the changes in the world in support of women. All right, and so when I went to the University of Tennessee in 1963, I was a math major, physics, zoology, and chemistry, and I was in the University of Tennessee band, and that was the first time they allowed women in the marching band at the university. So I was there, and I was trying to decide, and I was finishing my degrees when my sister called me from her house in Houston, and she said, "Dorene, I think it would be good if you would become a computer programmer." She says, "I don't know what it is, but they make a lot of money, and there are ads for them in the Houston paper." So I went to my advisor, and she looked around at UT and found there was one computer there, and there was one Fortran class in the engineering school, and she got me into that class. So that summer, my sister said, "Why don't you come out to Houston and we get you a summer job?" So she helped me find a job, and I got a job at MD Anderson Hospital and Cancer Center, and I was writing a Fortran program to study the effect of radiation on cancer cells. It was the first studies being done about how to treat cancer. I went back to UT the next year and started working on my master's degree, and I got a call from IBM. IBM had come to the school looking for people to offer jobs to, and apparently they saw I knew Fortran. Now we're talking about 1966, and they wanted to hire me, and I said, "I can't do that. I got to finish my master's degree." I said, "Well, how about this? We'll pay for your master's degree if you'll come to work for us." So it seemed like a good idea. So in 1967, I started to work for IBM in Kingston, New York. It's 100 miles north of New York City. And by 1974, I actually had gotten my degree from Syracuse University, because IBM brought the faculty over to the plant and taught the classes there so that we could get our master's degree. And I was the first woman that ever got one from that process. Always before, only men had done it. So once again, I lucked out because I was a woman. The reason IBM had decided to come and try to hire me was that the Vietnam War had taken all the men, and they had a huge project of brand new computers underway, and they had nobody to hire. So they were forced to hire women. And so me and some of my long-term friends were the first women that were hired and it was for software development in that time. I'd been there 2 or 3 years, and it was IBM finally decided that they were for the first time going to let women have an opportunity to be in management. And so me and several of my girlfriends were among the first managers ever in software and engineering in the IBM Corporation. And we didn't know that. This is just what it had, but it turns out we were very lucky in that way. The software development then was new, starting to work with color and displays and hardware and things that had never existed before. And so we were learning fun stuff all the time. And I ended up meeting Chick, my husband Chick, at IBM when he was coming out of the military and had been hired by IBM to also work in software development. We both worked in software there in Kingston until 1979, when IBM was ready to ship the first networking software. First time there was networking for companies to be able to connect computers. And that software was written partly in Kingston, New York, where we are, and partly here in Research Triangle Park. So in 1979, we went to England, to London, England, and worked there in a system center to help all of the countries in Europe and the Middle East and Africa and IBM learn what networking is and put the software in and get their companies to work. It turns out that I was among one of the first women managers in IBM in software in the US. And I was also the first manager woman IBM manager in IBM in Europe in the marketing and support division. So all along I ended up being in the first group of women who got to do things. And so we were very lucky and had a lot of fun from that. Right. When we first came back from London, I ended up having a new position to run a development lab in Dallas, Texas. And so it was a software development lab, and so we moved to Dallas and we lived there for 2 or 3 years, and then moved back here to Durham, where I was the manager of the software that did all the networking software in the lab here in RTP. After that, along the way, I was promoted, and I ended up, at this point, I was a director of software and then a vice president, responsible for doing the software re-engineering of all the processes and methods used to develop software in IBM across the laboratories around the world. And so my last couple of years was here in Raleigh, but I was really traveling around to a lot of other IBM labs around the world. When Chick and I were in London, we lived in London and for 2 years, and then also traveled around to all the IBM locations around Europe. So we got very used to lots of travel and lots of fun. And so almost any time we have any time, we look to see where we can go and what kind of travel we can see and what kind of nature we can participate in. So that's our main entertainment. COVID kind of got in the way of that a little bit. In 1997, 30 years were up, and so I retired. And Chick retired 1 year later, so after 30 years at IBM, it was 1976 and 1997 and 1998. So we were free to do whatever. In 1998, we created a business called CDL Consultants that was able to do any lawful business. We both joined Habitat. Chick worked with Habitat for a long time. I helped set up, we both went down to Katrina to help with disaster response for about 2 years off and on, helping down there. We've done disaster response to hurricanes and things in eastern North Carolina over there, and in Nashville. We have I've taken mission trips to Haiti with people from our church and teachers to be able to teach down in the Haiti schools. And so we've kept ourselves pretty busy with those kinds of things under the scope of that company. And we bought a camper, and so we've camped all over all the national parks in the U.S. And a little bit in Canada. And we still have the camper. It's over in western North Carolina right now. What else have we done? We travel because we got addicted to other countries when we were living in Europe, to go and see and learn about the other countries. And so we do Road Scholar travel. We've been with National Geographic travel. And just about anywhere that we can find that is pretty interesting. And we counted up the other day that we've been to about 35 countries so far for fun, and we still have a list to go.
But how did you and Chick decide Croasdaile Village?
Well, it wasn't very hard. We moved into Treburn in 1991, and we watched Durham blossom into such a wonderful place. And we knew that where we wanted to retire, we wanted to be able to have we wanted to have theater, we wanted to have music, we wanted to be able to play golf, we wanted to play tennis, right? We wanted to have good places to eat. We had all of those, and we looked around, and an airport, so we could travel everywhere. And we looked around, and it was here. The only question we never asked ourselves was anything about medicine. We never thought about it. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And so I started looking online to see about the different places. And Croasdaile was here. We first thought we would go to the forest at Duke. And we were signed up to go there when the park home became available here. And when we saw what a nice place it was, and then we had our own back porch and we could still have our charcoal grill, it beat the forest at Duke all the way.
There you go.
So that's how we picked here. And we moved in about 4 years ago.
Good. Since you and Chick have lived here, what have y'all been involved in on campus with what?
Well, we've been involved in not that many things because we haven't been here very long, and the stuff that we did before we moved here is still here in Durham, right? So we've picked up some things here to add to that stuff. So I'm in the CV chorale and the CV singers and the choir.
Good.
Because I love singing, and I was in the choir over at Westminster Presbyterian before I got here. So I like music. I'm in the Rusty Pipes, and I've gone back to the Durham Community Concert Band that I've been in for 19 years also. So essentially I'm still doing the singing and the playing my clarinet like I used to, but using what here is here at Croasdaile to add to what I had before. And then a friend of mine asked me to write an article for the Chatter one time, and I've been tricked into continuing that forever.
Tricked?
Yes.
But your articles are so good.
Well, they're written. I do much better writing than I do speaking.
Yeah,
And Linda Schuford makes me make them short, so that makes them better too.
But I can tell you that I read the Chatter all the time when it comes out on the first of the month or whenever it is, and I enjoy reading yours. Chick occasionally puts one in there, and I like that too.
Well, he'd never tried that before, and so he just does a good job because he can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're glad that you are a part of the Chatter. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks. and we hope you all have a nice, warming spring.